Right. Hello, 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 and welcome everyone to today's video where we're going to be talking about why healing, growth, integration, these paths that we're on of self-discovery and healing from trauma and healing from physical ailments and any kind of healing or integration work that we're on, why it's going to make your life worse before it makes your life better. And why it's going to incrementally, at different times and different places, seem like it's making your life worse, and then it's making it better, and then making it worse, and then making it better. And then we're also going to talk about how the external perception of these things, like how other people see us and how other people view us, and the ways in which that we may be judged as we're going on our healing path are going to come up, and how we may not feel solid and sure and clear on what we're doing, or if it's going to work, or if it's even working, and then having that external pressure and that external judgment and all of that. So I really, in this video, mostly want to validate, and I want to give some peace of mind, and I hope that we can all come to a bit of obviously, compassion for ourselves, and a view of the path, so that we don't get so caught up in feeling like we must be doing it wrong, or when we're in those moments of like dark night of the soul and we don't know what's working and everything that we're trying isn't working and all of these things, we don't like lose hope. So that's where I want to go today. That's what I'm going to talk about. Why if you're on this path, if you're on your healing path, you're on your growth path, you're on your evolution path, why it might feel like it's making things worse, and how to handle people judging you, how to handle doubting yourself, and all of that stuff. That's what I'm going to talk about today. Okay, so the first thing that I want to kind of introduce when we are looking at this idea of healing and growth and integration is the idea that it's very much, especially with mental and emotional and trauma healing stuff, we have to remember that this process is very, 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 very much like removing mold from a house. Okay? So when we are doing any kind of integration, healing, growth, expansion, physical, mental, emotional, trying to move ourselves from a situation where we're in pain and things aren't going well and things are hurting to a place where we're feeling better and we're doing better and life is different, there's always going to be this messy, totally confusing, don't know if you're doing the right thing or not, up and down, all over the place, taking wrong actions, making bigger messes than what you thought, middle, that I feel like no one ever talks about. Okay? Right, in our world, we tend to be really addicted to the before and after. We like hearing about people who were suffering like we are suffering, who were in pain like we're in pain, who are struggling with whatever we're struggling with. They did something, they had the answer, here's what it is, I'll sell you the program, I'll sell you the thing, I'll sell you the supplement, I'll sell you the whatever it is, and then after, everything's perfect. Okay? And everyone tends to make it sound, right? Like there was just like this linear progress from like, I was a mess, I didn't know what was going on, I was in pain, I was hurting, I was whatever, I was in my before, and you resonate with my before because my before is like you're right now. And then there was this straight line from that painful place to this awesome place. And that's how it happened. And I just feel like that most of the time that's dishonest, or it's selectively leaving things out, right? So I don't necessarily believe that people who have their before and after stories are always telling us lies. It's very possible that what they went through and what they're saying is truly a part of the journey they went on. But it's lying by omission a lot of the time, right? It's people not being honest about what that actual in-between was like. And even in the I found the thing that worked, I think a lot of the time people are oversimplifying their own journeys, and they're looking at the things that didn't work or that weren't the final step as not important, as not a part of the journey, as not a part of the before and after. It's just, I was in this before terrible place, things weren't working, and then I found this thing that worked, and that's what made all the difference. And usually the real honest truth is the thing that worked, that last thing that took them from where they were to where they wanted to go, was the last thing. But it wasn't the healing journey. And if we just kind of adopt the last thing they did, a lot of the time it's not going to work for us, because the last thing they did worked and got them where they were going, because they laid all of these foundations before that with all these other steps and all these other things that they did that they didn't talk about, because those things didn't look like they were taking them from pain to pleasure, right? And I feel like that is a huge thing that people who share their stories on the internet and in life in general, and we who consume people's stories, tend to not understand, is that the actual journey of anyone, even if someone tells you, this is the thing I did, and it was the thing that changed everything for me, they are neglecting to tell you all the other things that came before that, okay? And usually, again, they might look at those things and think those were the wrong things because they didn't make it better. They didn't fix the problem. Or those things weren't as important because they didn't get me that last step of the journey. But again, it's kind of like climbing a mountain, and they're literally telling you what they did to get from almost the summit to the summit, without telling you any of the things that they did to get from base camp to almost to the summit. Okay? So this is a big part of why listening to other people's healing journeys can be so discouraging sometimes. It's because they're not understanding that all of the things that didn't work, or all of the things that were a step that took them to another step, that took them to another step, that took them to another step, were vital for the journey. It wasn't just that last thing that was the thing that changed everything for them. That last thing was the last thing, on top of all the other steps that came before it, including all the failures and all the things that didn't work and everything you had to figure out in order to even get to that last step. So it's kind of like, I want you to think of it like how I think of psychedelics, okay, and other kind of plant medicine drugs. I believe, because what the science tells us about psychedelic drugs is that psychedelic drugs are stimulating your brain to do a thing your brain can already do. In other words, it's not really the plant that's taking you to a place that you couldn't go naturally. It's that it's stimulating your brain to go to that place. Okay? So what we can think of in terms of the experiences we can have on psychedelic drugs is we can think of it like taking a helicopter, taking a plane. So I heard this from someone recently talking, and I think it's a really perfect metaphor. That it's like taking a plane from the base of the mountain to the top of the mountain. You don't have to do any of the work. You don't have to take the journey. You can just get to the inside part. And there's benefit to that, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't take psychedelic drugs or whatever, you're an adult, you do whatever you want. All I'm saying is that there is something vitally important about climbing the mountain. So when we talk about the techniques that I recommend, right, the meditation, the self-love, like all of this like slow, heavy lifting, it seems like nothing is happening for a really, really, really long time. It kind of seems redundant. It seems like it's not working. It's hard. It's slow. It's little things that eventually get you to a place where you're having these expanded perception experiences, where you're having these expanded spiritual experiences. Your brain can do that, right? And we can get there either by taking the plane to the top of the mountain, or we can get there by climbing the mountain ourselves. And what I just want to offer is that the process of doing the work to climb the mountain, by doing it yourself through meditation and self-love and integration work and all of these things that I share on this platform, it is a different experience. And a lot of the time, it leads to a much more integrative and long-lasting effect from those mystical experiences that your brain can naturally have when you get yourself to do it on your own, right? When we get off our addiction to social media and our brains being overstimulated and we're disconnected from our feelings and we're disconnected from our bodies and we're disconnected from all this stuff, we start to reconnect with all of that stuff. Our biochemistry does start to shift and our mental state will start to be different. I have listened to several people describe their drug trips and been like, I thought that's what meditation was. I didn't realize that I was having a mystical experience because that's just what meditation was for me. So I'm saying it's possible to have these experiences without drugs because all the drug is doing is stimulating your brain to do something it already has the capacity to do. It's not giving you something you don't have. It's just supercharging you somewhere. And so in the process of learning to get there on your own, I believe there is much longer term benefits and integrative, and you can hold your insights easier. You can apply them to your life easier. By going slow, you don't have the mind-blowing, mind-altering weekend, but every time you get an insight, every time you have one of these experiences, as they will happen naturally, you can actually integrate it better. It's slower, it's less fireworks, but in the long run, it tends to be more grounded, more something you can integrate, and like I said, something that actually changes the way that you live, versus like blasting your consciousness open and then having no tools for what to do with it because you didn't have to build the vessel to hold those awarenesses, right? You didn't become the person who can actually live what you just saw because you didn't climb the mountain. You just flew up there. Yeah, you didn't get fit. So it's the same with our healing path. It's the same with integration. It's the same with any of this emotional mastery work. These are the slow, progressive journeys that there are several steps, and all of the things that we do from 0 to 100 are important, including the failures, including the things that didn't work, including everything we had to do to eliminate what wasn't the answer. Like, that is a huge part of the healing path and the growth path and the understanding path. And getting to the answer requires a lot of learning through trial and error, okay? So this is why I just want to say, when people come and tell you, I was here, I did this, that's what worked, that's the end, and then you look at your life and think, that is not what's happening for me, I must be doing it wrong. You're not doing it wrong, okay? There is nothing wrong with you. You're not fucking it up. That is reality, and that is probably reality for the person you're looking at. And they're just not telling you about that stuff because they perceive it, a lot of the time they're not telling you about it because they think of it as the mistake. They think of it as the thing that didn't work. It wasn't the thing that got them from the bottom to the top of the mountain. They perceived that, again, that last step was the thing that was it, and everything before it was just not it, when in fact, it absolutely was a part of it. It was a step that was vital, okay? So again, the metaphor of healing and integration, at any healing journey, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, you have to think of it like climbing a mountain. There's going to be many, 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 many steps, many phases, many things that you do that work to a degree, that don't work to a degree, that take you a little step forward, that take you a little step forward, that take you a little step forward. There is never going to be a thing that takes you from the bottom to the top. Okay? That's the first thing we all have to accept. And this is why, for a lot of us, integration and healing work feels like it makes our life worse. Because we don't like uncertainty. We do not like journey. We are not, right now, a culture that celebrates the path. We want to know we're on the right thing and that what we're doing is going to give us the answer. And we are impatient and we are demanding in a lot of ways. And like I said, we want that security and we want that guarantee that the thing that we're doing is it. We don't want to hear that the thing that we're doing is part of it, is a step, is a thing that's going to help. Okay? We don't want to hear, here's my other metaphor for this. It's that when we are in a state of trauma or physical illness or whatever it is that we're trying to integrate or heal, it's like being in debt. It's like having $1 million of debt. And for so many of us, we want to hear, what's the one thing that gets me the $1 million and $1 so that I can be in the green again? I am going to sit here and everything is wrong until it gets me in the green. So we get $10, which would take us $10 closer to the green. And we think, that didn't take me to the green, it was wrong. We get $100, well, that's not enough. We get $300, that's not enough. We get $1,000, that's not enough. We're still in debt. We're putting money in the bank, but we're still in debt. And so we think, it's not working. It must not have been the right thing. And it's like, no, it was absolutely the right thing. It took you $300 closer, and then $1,000 closer, and then $10 closer. And then eventually, that last $10 you deposit, that takes you into the green, right? You're now only $5 in debt, you get $10, and now you're $5 plus. You think $10 was the answer. And it's like, no, $10 wasn't the answer. That last $10 that took you from -5 to +5 was the last answer. But everything that came before it was absolutely vital for that $10 to be the thing that took you from -5 to +5. You see, if you hadn't done all those other steps, you would still be in debt. And most of us still look at steps and phases and progress as not it, as failure, as not the answer. So that's part of why we feel like our healing and integration work often makes us feel worse. Because the reality of the journey is always going to be different than our expectation. And we make ourselves feel terrible when we have an expectation that doesn't match reality. And instead of adjusting our expectation to how reality is, we get upset about how reality is and continue to expect our expectation. So I want to offer you this right now. On whatever healing and integration and growth path you're on, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, all three, it's going to happen in steps. It's going to happen in phases. Everything you do that doesn't work is a part of the path that is absolutely vital. Everything you do that takes you just a little bit closer, it doesn't solve the whole thing. It's not everything. It's a thing, a piece of the puzzle, is the right answer for you right now. You're doing it right. When you're trying something and it's not working, and you can just figure out why it didn't work, that's a vital piece of information. That's a part of the path. Without that, you would never be able to figure out what is going to work. So we need to start to accept and embrace that everything that happens between I'm going to change the way that I'm doing things and because I want to change the way that I'm feeling, and whatever our after is, everything that happens in between that is a vital part of the path. And without it, we can't get there. So let's all just come together for a moment and realize that the path is always going to be a path. There is never going to be the thing that takes you from the bottom of the mountain to the top. There's never going to be the thing that takes you from $1 million in debt to $1 million plus. It's always going to be steps. And again, right, when we're in debt, when we're in that feeling of things aren't working and we're just really in pain and we're doing stuff, and we put $10 into our $1 million of debt, we're not going to feel amazing, right? So again, this other part is that we often want, because we're in pain, right? I understand this, and we have to validate this. When we are on a healing path, the reason we're on that healing path is because we're in pain. We're in physical pain, we're in mental pain, we're in emotional pain, we're in spiritual pain. We want to feel better. That's why we're doing it. That's the motivation. Because remember, for most people, they're never going to go on a healing path. They're never going to go on an integration path. They're going to judge you for doing what you're doing. Because if there's one thing that scares the human being more than anything, it's uncertainty. It's the unknown. It's doing something different than what we're already doing, and then therefore we cannot predict the results. When we are on a healing and integration journey, we are 100% forcing ourselves out of our comfort zones. We are doing things different. We are choosing to change our habits, choosing to change the way that we think, that we move, that we breathe, that we do things. We are going into the unknown, and there isn't ever a guarantee of how those things are going to work out. Okay? And that together, when we're in pain already, is the reason why most people will never again, ever, even start a path like this. Because there's too much risk. The idea that we could try something different, which is going to feel so uncomfortable, it's going to be extra painful. We're already in pain. We have to do something different, which is painful, which then makes us different than our culture, makes us different than the people around us, right? Risks us getting rejected and abandoned and misunderstood, and we're now different from culture, and we're different from everyone else who's just coping and figuring it out or seems to be fine with it because they're different than us or whatever. We risk abandonment, we risk rejection, and we are disrupting our homeostasis, right? So we have to even remember that even if our homeostasis is terrible, even if our homeostasis feels horrible and is painful, a lot of the time we will stick with it for the rest of our lives because the only thing worse than a terrible homeostasis is something unknown. And we have to remember that. Our nervous systems and our bodies are constantly searching for homeostasis. And this is why so much of the time people don't change and grow and expand and become something new until they're in so much pain that the pain of staying the same is worse than the pain of changing, is worse than the pain of the unknown, is worse than the risk of being abandoned and rejected. And we have to understand how bad the pain has to get before that is true for most people. For most people, the pain of being in the unknown, being abandoned, and being rejected is always going to override the pain of whatever it is that they're in with their whatever they're in. Okay? And that is a huge part of this. We have to understand that. So the second thing about the healing and growth path that's going to make it feel like it's making your life worse is that when you go to change in any way, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, to try to heal. So like logically, it seems to make sense. If I'm doing something to try to make myself feel better, I should feel better. I should want to do that. I should have an inner motivation that this thing that I'm doing isn't working for me, it's hurting. It's doing something different should feel like something we should want to do. And then we go to try and we can't. And our nervous system shut us down. And we resist and we self-sabotage and we push it away. And we think, what's wrong with me? Well, that's your nervous system trying to protect you from doing something unfamiliar that it doesn't know is going to be okay. Because right now, whatever you're doing, your coping, your self-sabotage, your addiction, your habits, your ways of being in relationships, your work, everything that you're doing, again, as painful as it might be, is what your body thinks is the way to survive. It's your adaptive strategy right now. It's everything you've gathered up to this point as being the thing that helps keep you alive. So your nervous system and your body don't want to change. They don't want to do something different, even if that new and different thing is going to make it better. Your body doesn't know that. Your nervous system doesn't know that. And changing, even if you don't get rejected, even if you don't get abandoned, your body and your nervous system is going to feel like you're going to die. So a lot of the time, we don't even know what the effects of our change actually were for the first little while, because we're just dealing with the fact that our nervous system is freaking out that we changed at all. We can't tell if what we're doing is working or not, if it's helping or not, if it's a step in the right direction or not, because all that's happening when we make a change is our nervous system is freaking out. Our bodies are freaking out. Something is different, and that is just bad. So when we can learn to calm ourselves and to validate ourselves and to love ourselves safe, that's why these tools are so the only thing I teach. Because when we can make our nervous system safe, like, it's okay, I'm going to be here with you. I'm not going to abandon you. We're going to figure this out together. This is a path. This is a journey, right? When we can comfort ourselves when we have done something different, when we have done something new, then we can get the nervous system to calm down. And then we can observe the effects of whatever we just did. Okay, so if you're sitting there saying, I'm doing my healing work, I'm doing my growth work and whatever, and I can't even tell if it's working, it's probably because right now all you feel is your nervous system freaking out. Even if you've been doing something different for like a long time, it can just be triggering you every single day. Right? Even if you have changed your life 5 years ago and you still can't tell if what you're doing is working, it could be that even over the last 5 years, your body is still freaking out because you haven't learned to integrate and comfort yourself, who has changed from what you were doing 5 years ago, changed from your conditioning. Because again, that 5 years in the span of your entire life is nothing. If you're 30, if you're 25, that's still 25, 20 years of conditioning, being this is homeostasis, and now only 5 years of difference. That's not going to feel comfortable yet. And if we don't know how to calm our nervous system, that's why I say the self-love work of just showing up for ourselves. I'm going to be here with you. I'm not going to abandon you. Practicing building that connection with yourself so we can regulate our nervous system, feel a little bit safer, even though we're in the unknown. Then we can start to determine, okay, what are the actual effects of the practice, and what is just my nervous system freaking out that I'm doing something different? What's the actual effect of what I'm doing, and what's just my body and my nervous system freaking out that people are judging me, and people are abandoning me, and people are criticizing me? Because that's the next thing that's going to happen. When you change anything you're doing, you disrupt the homeostasis of everyone around you. Even people who you might think your life has no impact on their life, like people on the internet, people who follow you on social media. You change your diet, and all of a sudden, everyone freaks out at you. Because again, you just disrupted their homeostasis. You were before validating in some way their existence, their patterns, their habits, their continuing on with how their consensus reality works, right? So long as we're all doing what everyone else is doing, we're all patting each other on the back that this is good, this is good, this is what works, this is what works, this is the right way. And if there's something that is hurting you about it, you have to change yourself to fit into it, right? That's still our cultural concept. That's still what the self-help industry is fully built on. We have consensus reality right. If for some reason you can't have a healthy relationship, if you can't make a lot of money, if you can't figure out how to get your body healthy, if you have anxiety and depression and all these emotional issues, it's not that society is wrong. It's not that the culture you're trying to fit yourself into doesn't work for you. It's never question that. It's always there's something broken about you that you can't be successful in the system. And that is going to be the messaging that most of us get when we get on our self-love, on our integration, and on our healing path. It's, well, there's something wrong with you. You need to fix you. And this after that we're striving for, a lot of us, we're striving for an after that we are never going to be able to be at. Right? We're trying to heal, we're trying to feel better, we're trying to fix our anxiety, our depression, our physical stuff, thinking that when we just get rid of our physical ailment, when we just get rid of our anxiety, when we just get rid of our depression, when we just get rid of our self-sabotage, when we just get rid of our addiction, when we just get rid of our coping, when we just find the perfect mate, when we just find the job that's our passion and makes us $1 million, we'll be happy. We'll be able to live our normal life or our extraordinary life like a normal person that everyone approves of, and we'll just be happy while we're doing it because we'll just have gotten rid of that thing that was making us unhappy. And the real reality is you're unhappy because the system that you're trying to fit yourself into doesn't work for you. You're never going to be that. Culture doesn't work for you in some way or form or shape. And it's the coping, the self-sabotage, the anxiety, the depression, the physical ailment. That's the symptom. But it is not the thing that's ruining your life. That is the symptom. That is what is coming up in response to the culture, the way of life, the normal that is actually hurting you. That is the thing that will need to change in order for that symptom to go away. So again, most of us start our healing, growth, integration path trying to fix the thing we think is wrong with us, which is really the symptom that is showing us what isn't working for us. And then we have to learn a whole new way of being that, again, is going to make us different and weird and get us rejected and be misunderstood. And we have to find a whole new way of integrating or of interacting with reality, interacting with other human beings, figuring out a way of work that works for us, figuring out a way of eating that works for us, figuring out a way of living that works for us that might not match consensus reality in any way, that may not be anything we've ever seen anyone else do before. And again, remember, finding a life that works for us doesn't always mean we're completely counterculture. This is not a black and white thing. It doesn't always mean all of us are supposed to become nomadic hippies who only water fast and live on prana and live in the jungle. Like, it's not to say that if you have anxiety and depression or physical ailments, you have to like leave the city and you can't work a job and you're in the wrong relationship. It's not necessarily that. It could be the relationship you're in is great. The job you're in just isn't. And maybe you need a different apartment than the one you're living in, different neighborhood. Like, we're so complex that it's not that everything in culture is wrong. It's not that everything in culture is right. It's we need to figure out for ourselves what are the parts of it that are working for us, what are the parts of it that aren't working for us, and how do we find new ways of being in the parts that aren't working. So again, it's not to say that we all have to have these completely radical lives if normal isn't working for us. It's we need to figure out what parts of normal aren't working for us. Just what parts. And again, right, that's a complicated journey. A lot of us would rather believe, okay, it's not working in normal culture, I'm just going to move to Thailand and get rid of all my responsibilities and completely abandon everything, swing from one end of the pendulum to the other. Because that's easier than the nuance of figuring out what actually does and doesn't work for you. Right? But that's the actual healing journey. So part number 3 of why the healing journey often makes us feel worse is because it's making us confront these parts of our conditioning of this is what is normal, this is what's expected, this is the only way to be, that we've been indoctrinated with our entire lives, that our being is responding to. Yes? And we have to say, okay, what part of this isn't working for me? Where is this symptom coming from? Is the anxiety telling me the job isn't right? Is the anxiety telling me the job is right, but the way I'm going about it isn't correct? Is it telling me I need to let go of this relationship? Is it telling me, right? And then having to admit that what we were doing wasn't working, having to admit we were wrong, having to admit we tried something and it didn't work. So that's the next part. So anyways, I'll just finish this point, right? The healing journey is going to reveal nuance. It's going to reveal complexity and complication, and that the thing we think is wrong with us is actually the symptom. And then having to figure out a life that's actually going to work for us is very complex, because it's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's no one's going to be able to tell you exactly. You're not going to find a guru who has all the answers for you, because you're a unique individual. You're going to try things. Some things are going to work, some things are not going to work. You're going to think, maybe this is going to be right for me, and you'll try it, and it won't work, and then this, and then it won't work, and then this, and then it won't work, and this, and then it won't work. And then you find that thing that does, and you have to remember the only reason I found that thing that does work is because I did all these other things that didn't work. Right? That mountain climbing experience. It wasn't just the last thing that was right and everything else was wrong. It was all the things that didn't work led you to the understanding that led you to what did work. Without all those other steps, there could not have been the final revelation. So, mountain, journey, complexity. Symptoms are not the problem. Symptoms are the symptom. Figuring out what the problem is complex. Learning how to validate yourself and calm yourself when you've made a change and you've done something different and your nervous system is freaking out because all it perceives is that homeostasis just changed and I'm going to get rejected. To be able to even figure out if what we're doing is working or not. We have to learn how to comfort ourselves when we make a change. Learn how to comfort ourselves when we're being rejected and people are judging us, because that is going to happen. People are going to come up to you and they're going to be like, you don't seem better, you seem worse. And this is where my mold in the house metaphor comes from. Okay? Most people, almost all people, we can think of it like this, are living with mold in our houses. So mold is in the walls. You can't see it. We all have sniffles. We all have gargly throat. To lesser and greater degrees, we're being poisoned by the mold. But it's in the walls. You can't see it. And it's normal. Everyone has it. So we all have the pain. Everyone's in pain to a certain degree. Right? In our culture, this is true. And we cope and we manage. Some people take nasal sprays, some people do drugs, some people smoke cigarettes, some people eat, some people do whatever they're doing, right? Everyone's managing the symptoms to some degree. And they get worse and worse and worse over time until we're in our old age and we're all mold toxic and it's kind of too late by then. Then some of us are highly sensitive. Some of us, oh yeah, totally. What if you keep feeling worse? Keep listening, okay? I'm here with you. Some of us are super sensitive. I'm literally going to tell you, Sam, right now, why if you keep feeling worse. Here's the metaphor, okay? There's the mold in the walls. We're super sensitive. And we're having like a really extreme reaction. So we're having like anaphylaxis. We're like brain fog to the extreme. We're having swelling and histamine and all this stuff. We're the type of person that's like can't cope with the mold poisoning the way everyone else can. So that's already number one. Most of us who are on a healing path are extra sensitive in that we are less capable of adapting to the poison that everyone else is adapting to. It's more poisonous for us than it is for them. It's more out of alignment for us than it is for them, right? I think in a lot of ways, there are people who are fine in our culture because where their consciousness level is at, it's not that out of alignment for them. We have to all remember that where we are in our consciousness determines how out of alignment normal culture is for us. Okay, so even to judge yourself or to judge others, like how is everyone else doing this? Sometimes it's because it literally isn't hurting them as much as it's hurting you. It's literally not as bad for them as it is for you. You are more sensitive. You are a different type of person. Culture, you are one of the people that culture, in this lifetime for what you are, it just really doesn't work for you. Versus for some other people, there's more elements of it that do work for where they're at. And we have to allow for that variety. And it doesn't make anyone right or anyone wrong. It's just, we're different. If some other people are fine with coping and you are not, you're just different. You got to accept you are not fine with it. They are fine with it. You're different. That's okay. All right? So you are the type of person that the mold in the walls makes you very sick, makes you very upset. And you are the type of person that would rather journey into the unknown than stay the same and safe. So that already makes you totally different. You're sicker and more sensitive and more impacted than everyone else. And you have something inside of you that's making you go against your survival instinct to stay the same, where everyone else is going with their survival instinct to stay the same. You're going to be feeling levels of pain that are so much more intense than everyone else with those two things. So I want to validate that. What you are experiencing is real, it's extreme, it's more than what everyone else is feeling, and it's not something broken about you. You are just different, and that's okay. And they're not wrong. They're just not feeling it the way that you are, and that's okay. Different life paths. Okay? Next thing. When there's mold in the walls and we are sick from it, the answer is we have to take the wall down and get the mold out. That process is so much more dangerous, acutely dangerous, than just leaving the mold in the wall and being poisoned by it over time. You could get so much sicker from doing the mold extraction incorrectly, right? You take the wall down, you don't have the right precautions, you don't have the right filters, you don't have the right ways of getting it out. The amount of exposure you're going to get by taking the wall down, getting everything scraped out, replacing the floor, replacing the walls, replacing the drip rock, replacing the boards, the amount that you could get sick doing that versus just leaving it, right, is so much worse. And the process of taking the wall down, taking the floor out, getting all that stuff ripped out, cleaning it out, making sure you don't poison yourself, all of that stuff is incredibly difficult, incredibly messy, right? You're going to be making a huge mess that everyone who's leaving the mold in their walls isn't making. If you walked into the house with mold in the walls, and then you walked into the house of the person in the middle of the mold extraction, you would be like, mold extraction is a disaster. They are putting themselves at so much risk. They are in so much pain. It's such a huge mess. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. Everyone who's choosing to just leave the mold in the walls and cope with it is so much smarter. That looks like a much better idea. Because look at the huge mess you're making. Look at the huge risk you're taking. What if it doesn't work? What if you do it wrong? What if it's so much worse than you thought? What if it's like way deep into the walls and you have to do all these other walls and all the money it's going to take and all the time and all the experts and all the mistakes you're going to make and that you might make? The actual process of the mold remediation is messy and scary and dangerous and messy and scary and dangerous and unknown, and you really don't even know until you get in there what it's going to be, and getting in there is going to reveal a whole bunch of stuff that you didn't know was in there. Is it starting to sound like your spiritual, physical, mental, emotional healing journey? Right? We thought it was going to be fine. We'll just replace the gyp rock. You get in there and it's like, oh no, we have to replace the carpet. We have to replace the walls. We have to replace this other wall. It's in the wiring. You don't even know until you get in there how much it's going to be. And then you didn't know what you didn't know. And then you have to figure out as you're going what to do with each of these new things that come up that you didn't know were going to be there. This is why you keep feeling worse. Because before you start, you don't even know what you're getting yourself into. When you're first getting on your healing path, the first 5-10 years, integration of our traumas and our physical stuff or whatever, we don't know what the path is. We think we do, right? We think it's going to be a matter of, I'll just do the medical medium protocol and then I'll be healed. I'll just go to the Tony Robbins retreat and then I'll be healed. And my whole life will be different. I'll just get a therapist for 6 months and then we realize, oh my gosh, as we're going, it's like this reveals this, that reveals this, that reveals this, and it's so much more complicated than I thought it was. And it looks like we're making a bigger mess than was even there. But the truth is, that mess was always there. All that stuff was always there. We just didn't see it because it was behind the wall. Does this make sense? So it's going to look messy. It's going to look like, oh my God, this is so much worse than I thought it was. Because you don't know what's in there. As you start your healing and trauma work stuff, there's going to be so much. I thought I dealt with this, and then it comes up again. I didn't even know that was in there. I thought I was on the right path. I thought this was the next step, and then it turned out that was just a valley, and now there's a whole other side of the mountain. Because we don't know what we don't know about what we don't know and what we're not seeing. We don't know until we get in there. And then again, the getting in there is now we got our hands full of all this mold. And I don't want to think of our trauma and our stuff like that as mold. Like there's something bad inside of you that you're getting rid of. But the metaphor is more just that it's this journey of all of this unknown stuff that we're not going to be aware of until we get in there. And we are going to have to figure out how to deal with step by step by step as we're in pain, right? We're still in debt. And now we have to do all this stuff and it's unknown and people are judging us and we're taking steps that we thought were going to work and then they don't, and then people abandon us and then we're different and then we make people uncomfortable and then they make us uncomfortable and then our nervous systems freak out. You see? It's this whole roller coaster ride. And that's what the actual healing and integration journey looks like. 1 million steps, 1 million things being revealed we didn't even know were there, having to figure stuff out along the way while we're in pain, having to comfort our nervous system so that we can even figure out what the consequences of our actions have been, versus just feeling the fear of being different and doing different, knowing we're going to get rejected, knowing we're going to get misunderstood, figuring out the nuance between what is true and what is not, and all of this stuff. It's a lot. Okay, so what advice do you have for if my head wants to feel heal, but my body is too scared to really feel heal, anger, sadness? It's that very, 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 very slow and compassionate process of gently letting yourself feel the anger. So what I recommend is setting a timer for literally 90 seconds, where you're just going to say, I'm going to let myself feel angry for 90 seconds. I'm putting a time limit on it, right? I'm going to give it 90 seconds, and as soon as that 90 seconds is over, I can cope and numb and make it stop. It's just slowly getting yourself to practice feeling with a time limit so you know you can stop it, so that you start to show yourself you don't die while you feel it. Because this is what all of us think. We all have this exact same experience. That the intensity of the emotion, it literally feels like it's going to kill us. We have so much resistance. Yeah? That's totally normal. We are all like that. I still sometimes am like, I don't know if I have the strength to feel that right now. And I've been doing this for a long time. So we make it doable with increments, right? And just to prove to ourselves over and over and over again that we can feel it and not die. Feel it, not die. Feel it, not die. Okay, that's helpful? Okay. So this is why it's going to make, this is why the healing and integration journey is going to look like it's making your life worse before it makes it better. Because it's going to expose a whole bunch of unknowns. It's going to make you feel like you're getting rejected and abandoned. You're going to get rejected and abandoned. It's going to reveal a whole bunch of information to you you didn't know was there. It's going to be many, 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 many steps instead of a step. It's going to be having to learn. It's going to be having to be wrong, right? So do a thing that doesn't work. And rather than going into shame and into guilt and into thinking we'll never figure it out and hopelessness, we got to be able to say, okay, what did I learn from that? What information did I get from that? Because it wasn't a waste of time. Nothing on your path needs to be considered a failure or a waste of time if you can allow yourself to learn from it. What did you learn about what didn't work there? Right? The more we can have compassion for ourselves, and this really is that's why this is the one thing I teach, this self-love. Because when we have that capacity to comfort ourselves, when we're wrong, when we're in the unknown, when we're scared, when we're being rejected, when we're being abandoned, we have the capacity to connect with real reality. Because if we don't do that, whatever we're doing, we can't even tell what the effect actually is. Because all we're feeling is our nervous system freaking out. So again, if you're one of these people who's constantly like, I don't know if what I'm doing is right or not, you got to make your nervous system safe first. In order to be able to detect what the actual outcome of your actions is from a clear mind. Did this objectively do something good for me or objectively take me in the wrong direction? You will be able to know that when your nervous system is safe. When you don't know, when you keep thinking, I can't tell if this is working or not, that's usually a sign that your nervous system is just freaking out. So you got to return to continuing to build that relationship with yourself, which is hard. It's a process. It's not easy. You're not going to just be able to show up for yourself and make yourself feel safe with you. You practice. You practice, you practice. That's why, again, in my mystery school, it's 285 lessons on just how to integrate into your nervous system, to show up for yourself. Because it is hard, and it is scary, and it is challenging. And the more we can do that, the more we can come into our adult perspective, where we can say objectively, okay, did this lead to more pain or more pleasure? What were the actual outcomes of what I just did? Can I learn from it instead of feeling bad that it didn't give me the results that I wanted? Can I feel what I'm feeling and just go through the emotional process? This is why. Okay? Healing and integration work brings up a whole bunch of stuff. It makes us different, and especially, it takes us into the unknown. Okay, that's the last thing I really want to leave you with, is that you aren't going to know what the journey's going to look like. There's going to be a lot of time where you literally don't know if what you're doing is right or wrong, right? Like where you have to try something and just try it for a little while before you even know. Where you have to try something not knowing if it's going to work or not, and knowing that there's going to be that resistance inside of you, that you're in pain and you're struggling, and that you're just going to feel like it's not worth it unless I know for a fact it's going to work, right? So a lot of people will literally do nothing for their entire lives because the risk of doing something and having it not work is worse than just doing nothing. And we have to be willing to take the risk to do something and have it not work and learn from it and then try something else and then not work and then learn from it, instead of doubling down or just convincing ourselves that a thing is going to work and then I'm just going to keep pushing them on that until it literally kills me or whatever. A lot of people do that. Right? They've convinced themselves to change only because they've convinced themselves that the thing that they're going to do is going to work. And then when reality is showing them that it's not working, again, they won't admit to themselves that it's not working. Because then that would mean I took a step and it didn't work, and now I don't know what other step to take, and oh my gosh, there is no other step, this was all I had. The healing and integration journey is going to involve a lot of moments of literally I've just tried everything I know and now I don't have any more answers and I think it might be hopeless. I'm totally lost. I don't know what else to do. I've tried everything I know. And we have to be able to surrender into that to see the next thing. Because I promise you, when you get to that place where you've tried everything you can try, you've tried everything you know to try, and nothing's working the way you thought it was, there is another way. But we have to be willing to let go of all the stuff we thought was going to work and how we thought it was going to work, and to sit in that, okay, I don't know. I have to learn something I literally don't know at all right now. I have to open my perspective and my perception instead of closing down and assuming there's no answer. Or that I do have the answer and I just got to rejigger it and do it again somehow. The unknown is the last thing that all of us are so resistant to, we're so afraid of, and is literally the key to figuring everything out. When we have tried everything we know to try, when we've done everything we've known to do, we can't tell if it's working or not. The step we have to take is to surrender into the unknown. Like literally let ourselves melt into, I don't know, and I'm going to relax into that instead of freaking out and looking for the answer. The drop will be, it's going to feel like you're dropping off a mountain and off a cliff, and the drop is actually an inch, and your next step will be right there. But you have to be able to relax into it, which is not something we're great at. So that is why the healing journey often makes it look like it's making your life worse rather than better. You're disrupting your status quo, you're going into the unknown, you're revealing a whole bunch of stuff you didn't know, you're having to face all this complexity and nuance and going out on your own, and people rejecting you, and people abandoning you, and people judging you, and it looks like your practices are making things worse, and having to figure out if what you did was actually helpful, or if it's just your nervous system freaking out, or if it wasn't helpful, or if it's just your hope and your, right? It's complex. This is why. the mystery school is 100 years. This is why I keep making these videos and essentially saying the same thing over and over again. Okay? It's complicated. Getting from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain. And the top of the mountain is not even going to be what you think it's going to be. You're never going to be what culture and society and your conditioning has told you you're going to be. You're never going to heal your coping mechanism or your self-sabotage or your whatever and become happy because of that. You're going to figure out what ways of life were making it so that you had to adapt that way. And then you have to figure out what ways of life make it so that you don't have to cope like that. So that those symptoms don't come up anymore. What are you not getting? What are you getting you don't need? What is working for you? What is not working for you? Where are you growing? Where are you not growing? Okay? That's why it's so complex. So you're not doing it wrong. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you. I hope this validated for you that it is just complex. It's a journey. There is no answer. There is no one thing. It's a bunch of things. It's ups and downs and all arounds and in-betweens, and it just come back to compassion, come back to curiosity, come back to practicing how to relax your nervous system by being there for yourself. That's always the foundation. Compassion, curiosity for ourselves. And then relaxing into the unknown, seeing if we can feel just a little bit, right? Our next step will reveal itself to us. And we have to be willing to do $10, $100, $1,000, $10, right? We got to let go of looking for the answer and be willing to just do the next step. And sometimes the next step is the wrong thing, but we have to do that wrong thing in order to learn what we need to learn. There are no mistakes if you can learn from everything you've done. One step at a time. There is no it. It's going to reveal a mess to you that you didn't even know was in there. Everyone else is coping, and it seems like their life is better than yours when they're coping and you're in the middle of the mold extraction. Absolutely, that's how it's going to look. Okay? That's all normal. So that's that. You're perfect. You're awesome. I see you. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with anyone else. Accept your journey. Accept who you are. You don't have to compare yourself to anyone else. Other people can make it work. Fine. Good for them. Don't judge them. But don't judge yourself. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. And it's not about just throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? Figuring out the life that works for you is not always the most radical thing. You've got to figure out what parts of culture work for you and what parts of culture don't. It's not one or the other. All right? Okay. I see you. I love you. I'm here for you. But you got it. Your next step is right in front of you. It always is. Your next step will always be there. Just comfort yourself, and you'll see it. Okay? See you next week. Have a fantastic week. Talk to you later.